Mia, why did you drag me down to this dusty old basement? Okay, let's take a look. That looks like a TV. You know, televisions weren't always sleek, flat screen models. Oh yeah, back in the day, they were big old things that were impossible to move. I mean, my grandpa had one that weighed like 300 pounds. But I'd never heard of this brand before. The OK Boomer 3000? Yeah, go ahead, plug it in. Let's see what happens. Oh wow, it's working. Maybe we can surf some of the channels to find out how TV impacted daily life after World War II, its role in social change, and maybe find a music channel to explore the development of rock and roll. Oh wow, that looks like an old Western. My grandpa loved watching those shows. For families living in the US in the years after World War II, television was huge, physically and metaphorically. After the war ended, companies that had been producing everything needed to support the war effort began shifting their focus back to making goods for American consumers. And that included trying to find new forms of entertainment. Imagine your options were to either listen to the radio or go out to the movies. How could television change that? Well, television was the best of both radio and movies. You see, it would be great for at-home entertainment, like the radio. But it also shows images like the movies. I know we take it for granted now, but back then, TV was revolutionary. In fact, it was so revolutionary that we're still watching it today. How do you and your family watch television? There's a pretty good chance that you're using streaming services to watch shows and movies whenever you want. You may even have a couple of TVs or other devices like tablets and computers. And everybody might be watching different shows. But watching television in the years after World War II was completely different. What do you think some of those differences were? First, there were only 3 major networks: ABC, NBC, and CBS. And these networks aired shows on a specific day and time. That meant you either had to see a new episode at that time or wait until it aired again as a rerun. Popular shows like I Love Lucy and Bonanza became a weekly event for the whole family. Why do you think the whole family might end up watching the same TV shows? Well, most families could only afford one television. So while viewers might have had limited choices, it did help foster a sense of community. The day after a show aired, people might talk about the hijinks the Brady kids found themselves in, or how Perry Mason managed to crack the case and get justice for his client. And the best part? All of this was free. No monthly subscription. How was that even possible? You may want to think about the economic changes that occurred after World War II. Well, the 1950s and 60s were an era when the economy was growing and new products were being introduced. Networks made their money and paid for shows by selling advertisements for the products that were part of the post-war consumer economy. Commercials for goods like Coke aired during breaks in television shows. TV definitely impacted people's daily lives and spending habits, but we should see what else is on. Nope, nope, no remote for this TV set. See, back in the day, if you wanted to change a channel, you had to get up, walk over to the television, and physically change the channel. Yeah, I know, that does feel like doing too much. Tell you what, why don't we see what's on Channel 7? Oh wow, Mia News! This is kind of cool. What do you think television news was like after World War II? And don't worry if your answer isn't perfect. We'll discuss it after you've finished. Remember, there were only 3 networks back then. So those networks were responsible for showing everything viewers wanted to see. That means there was a lot less news coverage. And less coverage meant that networks covered only the events they believed were the most important. Plus, the news had to appeal to viewers with a wide range of views, so it tried to provide a balanced perspective. Television's ability to provide footage of current events made it easier for viewers to connect with what was happening in the world. Millions of people could all watch a man walking on the moon, or they could share in the sadness and grief of a young, popular president who was assassinated in his prime. TV news could also shape how people viewed current events, like the Vietnam War. How might seeing images like this impact people's opinions about the war? Well, as Americans saw more and more images of the destruction caused by the Vietnam War, many began to support the growing anti-war movement of the 1960s. News shows played a key role in pushing for social change. Yeah, I know, that was kind of heavy. Want to try and find something a little more fun? Okay, let's check out Channel 2. I know, that's kind of groovy. I can't believe that bands this great were on TV. Television was great for rock and roll. Variety shows like The Ed Sullivan Show and Laugh In always had popular musicians and bands performing their hits, and rock was the soundtrack of the era. Elvis and similar artists played a big role in music history by bringing the rich and soulful sounds from Black communities into the mainstream. In a nation that was just starting to come to grips with segregation, this new type of music transcended racial boundaries. The earliest rock music was heavily influenced by styles like jazz, the blues, gospel, bluegrass, country and western, and rockabilly. Groups like the Temptations and the Supremes captured the hearts of a wide audience, blending different musical styles into a powerful mix that everyone could enjoy. Their music was about connecting people and celebrated a shared love for music. In the earliest days of rock and roll, many of the most popular artists were young, in their teens and early 20s. How do you think that impacted the music? They sang about stuff like cruising in cars, falling in love for the first time, and dealing with parents who just didn't get it. But what do you think happened as the artists and audience for rock and roll grew up? The music started to grow up too, discussing things like equal rights, standing up for peace, and making the world a fairer place. And as rock and roll grew up and evolved, so did the television shows that featured these sounds. Music would always have a home on TV. Okay, Mia, I think we've maxed out on screen time for today. I know, television was such an important part of the years after World War II. Aside from the entertainment, it provided a place for companies to advertise their products. And television changed how people consumed the news and helped shape public opinion about the issues of the day. Plus, it was a forum for the emergence of rock and roll music, the soundtrack of the time. This new sound bridged gaps between races and helped a generation of young Americans express their feelings about the rapidly changing world. The next time we get together, we're going to look at one of the most important social movements of the time, the Civil Rights Movement. Until then, remember, shaping the future begins with understanding the past.
Hey, hey!